What is up, people of Middle-earth? Welcome to my The Lord of the Rings of Power main teaser trailer breakdown. So today what we're going to do is obviously break down all of the details to start off with, the things you may have missed, some theories because why not? This trailer gave us a boatload of information to work with. And then at the very end of this video, I'm going to get into my review and impression of what this new look has given us, because in case you're brand new here and you may be thinking, oh yeah, you know, a new Lord of the Rings show, what's going on with this? Oh, okay, it's a few thousand years into the past, it's getting into the forging of the rings of power, Sauron the Deceiver, you know, worming his way in and all of that. It hasn't exactly been the best received thing off of previous looks, and I want to talk about how I'm feeling about this new look and what I'm kind of gauging from the fandom in general at the very end. But either way, you know, whether you're a fan or not a fan and you just want to know details about this and what this trailer gets into, that is exactly what this video is for. So the very first shot of this main teaser, I believe, shows us different little glimpses of Numenor, of which we've seen quite a bit in that first teaser, which is when we get a voiceover saying as follows: "There was a time when the world was so young there had not yet been a sunrise, but even then there was light." And what I like about this next part is, or as this was unfolding, we get a bit of that somewhat nostalgic, elvish kind of, you know, when we first came across Rivendell in the movies, music kick in. It gives you that Middle-earth feel. And referring to that light, that is where we see that very same, and I believe our first ever look at the Rings of Power show, as we see this figure walk up this hill, and I believe in the background you can see the city of Tirion. With, of course, as we've discussed in the previous teaser on this channel, you can spot the two trees of Valinor in the background. With Lorelin at the front, looking a little bit more gold, and then Telperion gleaming with all of its bright silver, just kind of slightly behind it. And I believe some part later in this trailer we might get a little bit of a glimpse by how bright that light is, as it could be possibly hitting Galadriel's face here that you can see in this shot. Then this part of the trailer just really wants to boast the landscapes that they've managed to create for this show. So here we see people moving over this particular area. It's kind of hard to make out exactly who they are. We get more aerial shots of people traveling over these mountains. Now I feel like we may have seen these mountains in the previous teaser, possibly linking back to when Galadriel was featured in that first teaser, going up the side of the mountain. And we also get shots of the elves navigating their way through these harsh environments. Mixed amongst all of this, if you kind of compare the images, it does all seem to be in a similar location because there's even more footage. We see Galadriel place her sword in the ground, with her and this other elf having the same elven blades as well, so it looks like they're part of this same party embarking on whatever they're going to do, with a voiceover saying, "You have fought long enough, Galadriel. Put up your sword." Now, it is Elrond, quite a younger Elrond saying this, given the time of the show. But as we know with Galadriel and the plot that she has in this beginning season, is that she will insist otherwise, because she knows and senses that a great and growing evil is coming. She says herself that the enemy is still out there. The question is now where? Then, of course, we get even more shots. Now, this time we're seeing some elvish architecture here. Now, I'm not sure if this is around the same area of the city we went over a few seconds ago, which was Tirion, or if it's another place entirely, because it could also be a peek at the elven realm of Lindon, which we know is going to be featured in the show due to the characters we have to explore in the series. And that's when we get the voiceover continuing, except with a Harfoot saying that elves have their forests to protect, and then it goes on to detail dwarves and whatnot, but we're going to pause that for just a second. The Harfoots that we're going to see in the Rings of Power are basically hobbits, although the show is going out of their way to say that they're technically not, and that they're the predecessor to the hobbits that we'll see in many years to come. The Harfoots that we're going to see in this series are more nomadic, rather than that of dwelling in a little hobbit hole. But again, guys, they are hobbits. And then we get even more locations featured, and if you're here for like some of the more serious stuff, don't worry, we are getting to it. And this next location, we get a peek at Khazad-dum. Later on in the trailer, just to kind of pair it all in one place, we do see Elrond seemingly getting escorted through Khazad-dum by a dwarf guard, with even more gorgeous shots, with life beaming there, with dwarf activity. And then, as for all of the Khazad-dum stuff in the trailer, much later on, we do get the Prince of Khazad-dum Khazad-dum himself during the 4th, saying that this could be the beginning of a new era, while he's holding up this kind of tiny little piece of ore. And it's like, a dawn of a new era? Have the dwarves found their mithril? And also we have to consider, from some of the promo shots, we do see Celebrimbor with Elrond. So it's like maybe Elrond goes to Khazad-dum. Perhaps he's inquiring into the mithril on behalf of Celebrimbor. This is where we see that meteor. The meteor from the first teaser that has piqued a lot of people's interest come crashing in, flying over Eleanor Brandyfoot, also known as Nori in the series, who will probably come across this meteorite crash location out of a little bit of Hobbit curiosity, but more on who this person is, the whole meteorite thing, towards the end of this video. Up next, they're showing off another location, of which doesn't remotely seem to have any elven architecture. If anything, it looks to be some kind of city or kingdom of man, kind of reminiscent of Minas Tirith, but I could be wrong. But let me know if you have any guesses down in the comments. Continuing on from earlier, getting into a bit of the darker side of things, with the tease from Galadriel saying that the enemy is still out there. Up next, we get a little teaser of a snow troll's hand, of which we did get a very good look at from this image you're seeing on screen from Empire. Now, this part of the trailer quite intrigued me, because this group of people here could be the elves that we see journeying earlier on in the teaser, and it makes sense as well that it could be the same group of people leading them to a confrontation with the snow troll, and, you know, even later we see some fights going on there. But the thing is, where are they going? What are they looking for? Well, it's probably all to do with Galadriel's insistence on the enemy still being out there, and with regards to the, you know, title of the Rings of Power, Sauron is indeed out there, and she knows there is evil to be found. Not to mention as well, just within that of the source material, Galadriel herself has suffered quite greatly at the hands, or should I say the effect of Sauron, through that of losing her brothers. So I have no doubt that in the show we are going to get some dialogue between characters such as Elrond that will explore this. And considering that we have Galadriel's brother Finrod cast in the show, this, you know, could take a very dark turn, you know, as the series unfolds and, you know, explores these events. So who knows, possibly we have Galadriel with this search party looking for her brother. This could be how they get a bit more into the know of whom he could have been captured by, beginning with a capital S. But honestly, it's anyone's guess. So if you have any theories as to this location, what they're doing, let me know any theories down in the comments. That's when we have Elrond say to Galadriel, "It is over." And Galadriel responds, "You have not seen what I have seen," to which he says, "I've seen my share." Now, one of the important characters in the Rings of Power show, and I'm sure a lot of fans already know this, but again, given the title of the show, is a character of whom Sauron manages to convince to forge the actual Rings of Power. Now, not too long ago, we actually got a really good look, again, in a promo image of Celebrimbor. With the showrunner teasing, we're dealing with one of the greatest villains that's ever been created in Sauron. And one of the central figures in the story is the character of Celebrimbor. He was an elven smith who was manipulated into helping create the Rings of Power. We're excited to be bringing him to Middle-earth. He's very mysterious, and he's played by Charles Edwards. And with all of this talk of evil brewing, this is when we get one of the most talked about or iconic shots in the trailer. And what you're seeing on screen right now is Galadriel in a completely engulfed shot of red. It looks like there's, you know, she's all dusty, possibly with ash on her face and her armor, likely having been among fire in this huge battle. And we see many bodies floating in the sea, with possibly buildings on fire above the water collapsing in. Now, as a result of this, a lot of people's knee-jerk reaction, you could say, is that this could possibly be the downfall of Numenor, or possibly Galadriel having a vision of the downfall of Numenor. As, you know, funnily enough, and which is why many people were thinking this could be the case, is because the downfall of Numenor, it was quite literally drowned in what is known as the drowning of Numenor, and this would be a pretty cool perspective shot of that from underneath the ocean. But the thing is, it's just extremely unlikely that this is the case, because the downfall of Numenor to be in season 1 is way too early to do that, given that Amazon ideally, you know, wants to continue this series for quite a few seasons, if you've heard about how much they've invested into the Rings of Power show. So this event of the downfall of Numenor shouldn't really happen for quite a while. Even with, as we know, that this series is kind of condensing time, you could say, amongst events and characters, which is kind of one of the things that is pissing a few fans off, to put it bluntly. But just to give you some idea as to why it shouldn't really happen, or why this isn't that shot, you know, the downfall of Numenor happens quite a long time after Sauron has even forged, or, you know, got Celebrimbor to forge the Rings of Power. And even when Sauron has the One Ring himself, of which he gets pretty wrecked at the downfall of Numenor, and his body falls with it and dies. Although, you know, he still manages to, you know, retrieve the One Ring in his little spirit form and, you know, trot his way back to Mordor for the times ahead, going on to eventually create a new form. And that is the one that we know Isildur destroys and chops his little freaking finger off, and then Isildur gets the ring, and the rest is history. Now, I'd love your theories, guys, because many other people were saying, could this be the War of Wrath, which would be absolutely insane, and I would absolutely love to see anything like that in this show. And if you don't know what that is, it's essentially the final battle against Morgoth, of which marked the end of the First Age. And this battle was so devastating that it essentially kind of obliterated this portion of Middle-earth, which, funnily enough, ended in that sinking beneath the ocean as well. But more to the point, I wouldn't be surprised if this show gave us some context into larger historical events, more specifically the War of Wrath, because it's kind of like the beginning of the Fellowship of the Ring movie, where we got some insight into how the ring ended up in the Shire. I think it would be really cool, and I wouldn't, again, be surprised if they want to try and maybe say that Galadriel was there. You have not seen what I have seen, you know, maybe this goes back to that line. To my knowledge, I don't know if there was anything specific about Galadriel being at the War of Wrath, but Tolkien heads do you know, correct me if I'm wrong, but it could arguably be the thing of where this show wants to be like, oh, you know, considering it was a battle that lasted for a very, very, very long time, the show is making it that she did witness some form of it. One of those things where adaptations aren't necessarily always copy and paste, but I know a lot of fans are butchering this show for that, in terms of how this show might not be adapting things in the way it should be. And I do believe it was actually suggested that Galadriel did leave to go to Middle-earth quite some time before the War of Wrath even happened. But either way, like, you know, without rambling too much about all of that, I would still really dig some kind of like, hey, like, context flashback to something as epic as that. Other shots show us a ship entering Numenor, giving us another great look. And then we hear Gil-galad, a high king of the elves in Middle-earth, say that darkness will march over the face of the earth, and it will be the end of not just our people, but all peoples. Once again, you know, at this portion of the trailer, as we're getting to the close, really, really heavily emphasizing, along with Galadriel, that darkness is coming, and that Galadriel isn't the only one picking up on the scent of Sauron the Deceiver and his upcoming diabolical plan with the forging of the Rings of Power, among many, many other sneaky little things in the time ahead, which future seasons will most definitely get into. Then we see Tamriel, who is the heir to Numenor, and this is a pretty cool shot because she appears to be reacting to these petals that are falling with a very apprehensive look on her face. So it's very possible that these could be the petals from the white tree Nimloth, signifying and just, you know, foreshadowing the darkness to come. But now going back to the Harfoot Nori, this is where she's looking at the result of the meteor, and we get a much better look at the man who comes out of the meteor crash. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I couldn't tell you definitively who this is. I think there's a lot of speculation surrounding this. You know, we can see that someone is approaching him from behind while he's kind of gathering himself, I guess, you know, since he did kind of just fall from the freaking sky. I'm guessing that is Nori or a possible other Harfoot being like, hey, who are you? And later on in the trailer, linking it here, we get even more shots where we see the rocks are like suspended in the air, if you will. So that does imply that some magic is being used. And interestingly, very interestingly, we see like all of the flames and fire kind of extinguish and fold back within whoever this person is. And just before this happens though, and it's all in this bird's eye view, and this is contributing to a lot of theories, that this pattern or shape is leading various fans to think that this could be Sauron taking his form, because it does somewhat feel reminiscent of an eye if you pause it in this frame. Now, if you ask me, like, obviously when making this, that shape and pattern is extremely deliberate in the post-production. But the thing is, it could be a misdirect or a red herring in the show where the show maybe wants you to believe this is Sauron, but it could be someone else. And that's the thing, even with this show adapting various things, I do think there's going to be innovative things where it's like, oh, like, that's how Sauron took form. But again, wouldn't be surprised if that annoys people. It is interesting in how this person falls. It does kind of remind me of Lucifer, like a fallen angel crashing down and, gathering himself. And that would live up to Sauron in a way. But no matter what, I think we can agree that this person is very important. They're powerful because, a simple dude can't just, like, survive crashing from the skies. So whoever this is, whether it's a Maya or whatever, I can't put a finger on this personally, but even when you have to take into account that the fact that this show is condensing various plot points that happen over a very long period of time in this show, it could kind of be quite a few characters. Now this is where we get a shot of a character known as Halbrand, and as for where he is, it's kind of hard to tell, and if you didn't already know, he is an original character created for the show, of whom we know will be stranded on the raft in the storm where he encounters Galadriel, who also is in a similar situation, as well as a look at Arondir, who is also a new character created for the show, and he appears to be wearing this armor where it looks as though there's like an Ent's face on it. Up next, we get a glimpse of these horses charging. I believe we've seen this shot before. I believe we have Galadriel with a bunch of Numenorians. And speaking of Numenorians, we see a Numenorian ship with Isildur himself, and we all know who he is and what he goes on to do. But then we get a look at Elendil. We hear the voice from Isildur initially saying that the past is with us all, and then a response from Elendil saying that the past is dead. We either move forward or we die with it. Now, next up will be quite a big character, I imagine, given where things go, and that is Ar-Pharazôn. He appears to be speaking to the Numenorians, and the reason why he's quite a big character is that he eventually goes on to have a heavy contribution to the downfall of Numenor. Due to his desire for eternal life, he's essentially a man who has a big hunger for power and glory, to the point of where he takes the rightful ruler of Numenor, Tamiriel, against her will, of whom we were talking about earlier with the petals coming down, if you remember, of whom is actually his cousin, and he goes on to usurp the throne. And the thing about this character, let's just say that there's quite a bit of influencing of Sauron here, and Sauron basically worms his way in and becomes Ar-Pharazôn's most trusted advisor. At this part, we see a bunch of elves raising their swords up. It's kind of hard to see what's going on here. Among a few action scenes of what appears to be Arondir dodging this wolf, if you will. Then we see Galadriel fighting that snow troll we were talking about earlier. And I believe that's more or less where the trailer ends off, other than the Harfoots exploring the countryside by the looks of it. So my thoughts, what are my thoughts on this new look at The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power? So personally, I think this was a much better trailer than that first one. I think when you want to capitalize on a new series like this, you should always come out punching, so maybe this should have been at least the first teaser, and then we get an even bolder main trailer. Now, initially, when I was looking at comments of when this first dropped, I 110% saw many people saying, oh, this kind of sold me on the series, at least for now. People were saying, like, I'm not, saying I love it or anything, but this is a lot better than the first trailer. I kind of agree with that, but now when I look at the YouTube video, there's still a lot of comments of saying evil cannot create anything new. They can only corrupt and ruin what good forces have invented or made. A lot of fans basically taking the stance of what this is basically a deviation of Tolkien's work. More quotes saying things like, whereas Melkor spent his energy in envy and hate, until at last he could make nothing save in mockery of the thought of others, and all their works he destroyed if he could. Again, saying that this is what Amazon's done with their adaptation of this Age of Middle-earth and the stories they're telling. I understand the perspective there, and there are going to be some changes. For me, I just want to kind of see if what it's about first, and this trailer did have a bit of a better punch. There's certain things with it that I really like the look of in terms of design and production, but it's kind of weird at the same time as well. Like, for example, the Numenorian armor kind of looks a bit off. No way near the levels of, like, the Witcher Nilfgaard armor in Season 1 or anything like that, but there's a lot I can compliment about the imagery of the show. obviously, they've put a lot of money into it, but there's some other things that I don't think still come off even as good as what we had with the old movies, which is insane, because, long story short, a bit of a side note here, I got the 4K copies of The Lord of the Rings, and it's just absolutely mind-blowing how good those films have aged. I'm almost speechless. I can't articulate how well those movies have aged. They feel like as if they haven't. Either way, though, I just wanted to do another video covering this. I covered the last one, so I wanted to give my thoughts on this one. So what are your thoughts on this new trailer? Do you like the look of it? Do you at least think it looks better than the first teaser trailer? Or are you a fan who is just still really kind of feeling wronged by some of the changes made to the point of where you feel like it's too invasive on your possible enjoyment of the series? Or are you kind of like, even with changes, I can still, you know, look at this as an adaptation and see what it is? Let me know down in the comments below. It's very interesting to read various different opinions on this matter, because I don't think I've seen this much backlash with regards to an announcement and subtle teasers of a show for quite some time. Either way though, guys, if you like this video, I'd really appreciate it if you just hit that like button. It takes 2 seconds, and if you want to follow me more, do consider subscribing to the channel. I'm sure there's other videos that you will enjoy here, but for now, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching. Hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you people of Middle Earth in the next video. Goodbye.